I'm giving this presentation, I've given it before, but in the meantime, some new information has come out and also some errors in old presentations. It's sometimes a little intimidating when somebody in the audience is your mentor when it comes to colonial paper money and actually was my instructor for a couple of summer seminars. So he will keep me on the straight and narrow, I'm sure. If I do err, I will hear about it later. So,
got lots of rotten fruit back there.
lot of rotten fruit. Okay, thank you, Eric. Okay, paper money started in 1690 in Massachusetts, and it was within a decade or two after that, all the other colonies followed suit. I'm going to be talking about Continental currency, which was not issued by the states, but was issued by the authority of the Continental Congress to fund our government and our Revolutionary War. In the past, I've said that in my heart, I really believe that our founding fathers had original intentions to make good on this paper money. And in the meantime, listening to a video and purchasing a book by Professor Farley Grubb of the University of Delaware, I found out that this is actually the case. The Second Continental Congress, for the issue of May 1775, made the states guarantee the $3 million that was approved to spend and have printed in paper money. Now, this guarantee was that you could get your money back in hard coin in the years 1779, 1780, and 1781. So you couldn't just take the bill and automatically get your money back. The states were the ones responsible for redeeming these notes, not the Continental Congress. They were just representatives of the states. And the states took their portion of the $3 million based on their population. So a heavily populated state like Pennsylvania would be responsible to redeem a lot more than a small state like Rhode Island. This was also the case for the second authorized issue of Continental currency, and that was to be 1782, 83, and 84. After that legislation, they no longer legislated for redeeming these notes. It was probably assumed that they'd go on 3-year increments, in which case all of the paper money would have been redeemed by the War of 1812, if they did that. But by the time 1779 came around, the states did not redeem their money. Poor New York was occupied by the British, so there's no way they would put Continental currency into circulation. The states would receive Continental currency as payment in taxes and whatever, and then say if Virginia was responsible to redeem $100,000 in Continental currency, they could send $100,000 in Continental currency to the Continental Congress, and their obligation was taken care of. If they had only $80,000 in Continental currency in their coffers, that was in taxes or however they obtained it, they would send that to the Continental Congress, and then they were obligated to pay the other $20,000 in hard currency. So without making your eyes roll back into your foreheads, I think I'll just go on from there. The note on the screen right there is one of the 4 fractional bills with a design that's attributed to Ben Franklin. Eric Newman did excellent research on that. This chart is different than the one I've used in the past. Why is it different? Because I made a mistake or two. So I worked with John Bolger, and going back to Eric Newman's book, which is not without mistakes. There's discrepancies in some places between the 5th and 6th editions, but this is as accurate as we can get. Let's see, laser pointer. The left column are the 11 authorization dates that you will find on the Continental currency. Across the top are 23 different denominations. Our economy today serves very well having 7 denominations. Why we had 23 denominations, I'll get into in a few minutes. On the right column is the total amount authorized by that legislation to be printed in continental currency. The numbers in each box coincide with the date of authorization and the denomination, and that is approximate in thousands. And the issues that are highlighted in yellow are known counterfeits. The British had a couple ships, 2 ships in the harbor, New York, the HMS Phoenix and the HMS Duchess of Gordon, both of which were producing counterfeit continental currency to try to undermine our economy. That may be the first, to my knowledge, it's the first time economic warfare was put into place, and it's gone ever since. Even in World War II, there was economic warfare going on in Germany and elsewhere. So with all these 23 different denominations, these are the 11 different issue dates. Why? Why 23 different denominations? Here's a picture of a sheet of continental currency. Thank you, honey. This happens to be in my collection, and I got approval before I actually laid out the money, and I'm very proud to have it. But as you see, it's an untrimmed sheet, and the dimensions of the sheet are approximately 17 inches by 13 3/4 inches. What they did is they printed one side, and if you flip it over and print it again, the reverses and obverses will match. So you'll get 16 notes printed of 2 different denominations in one sheet. I don't know if it shows here, but along the center line there are 2 holes. There was a little miscataloguing in the stacked sale of a sheet of currency where they said that those holes were probably from a binding. They were not. They were put there in the printing process so that when they flipped the sheet over, it lined up. You'll notice that the backs on the right-hand side there are slightly smaller than the fronts, and so if there was a little bit of a shift, the back would still be in the appropriate position, and it worked quite well. So the magic number there is 16 and 8. So if you look, this is a part of the list I showed earlier, and if you'll notice on all of these, they have 8 notes, which would match with the 16-note sheet, and the very last issue of 1779 has 16 notes, so they could have 2 printing presses operating at the same time for the final 1779 issue. So all this ties in with my theory, is that they determined how much money the government needed in that right column, and then so that they didn't have to make 1 billion notes or notes that were maybe thousands of dollars. You'll notice that the range of denominations is mostly in the center there. And this being to try to conserve paper costs, printing costs, and these were actually a type of zero coupon bond, as Professor Grubb had said, which people weren't expected to redeem these until 1779, but they would trade in the meantime based on future redemption. So you have all those in there, and this lines up perfectly. So getting into this is a sheet of the fractional continental currency, and you'll see that there are 24 notes here, 2 times 12, and there are 4 different denominations. This is also on the same size sheet as the main continental currency, but these notes are much smaller than the regular issues. So I had to show this because, of course, being a fractional denomination, it doesn't go along with my theory. So we have three issues here which don't exactly coincide with my theory. So the first one is May 10th, 1775, and in that you'll see that there are 8 denominations, $1 through $8, and then there's a $20 and a $30. Now, the 8 denominations and the $20 do add up to $2 million, a little bit after the initial legislation. This was not the date of the initial legislation. They put the date of the Second Continental Congress on these notes. But the authorization a few weeks later authorized $2 million. I guess as an afterthought, they wanted to add on another $1 million, so they made the $30 denomination. The $20 denomination was struck on paper that Ben Franklin brought back from France that had a marbled edge. It was pretty to look at, but really a terrible paper quality. And to find one that exists in very nice condition is very rare. And because of the Franklin connection, they're also very expensive. But they do make excellent Christmas gifts. And then the $30 note, in order to add the $1 million, they struck 33,300 of these notes. Now, how did they do it? Did they do a one-off printing like they did for the 20? No, Eric Newman, I'm going to jump ahead one slide. Eric Newman suggested that they made the $30 plate for this denomination and moved it into the plate having the 8 denominations. And he's correct. This bill pictured here, you can see at the bottom, I should call it a note, not a bill. You can see at the bottom here, part of another note. So being that there's only one printing block for this denomination, this other note happens to be a $7 denomination. So the $30 note was placed in each of the 8 positions until its number was met, and then they just continued the striking for the rest of the denominations. So that's why the one-off is there. I know this is a little mind-numbing, but it's something new. Oh, and the next slide is a picture of that marbled currency, marbled edge. Very pretty. That's a beautiful note. I don't know exactly whose that was, but I would love to have one even if the paper quality was terrible. Okay, going back to my chart there, you see in the second line here, the fractional denominations, and they're a totally different animal than the regular continental currency. And then you have the February 17th, 1776 issue. There are 8 denominations, but there's a different amount that were printed. You'll see that the first 4 denominations are 130,000 of each of those denominations, but the $5 through $8 are 65,200 of each of those. This was a learning process early on for the Continental Congress. They could have fixed the numbers so that everything was an equal number. I don't know why they didn't. They learned their lesson for the future issues. So that sheet with all the 16 notes on it, the denominations of $5 through $8 would have been the outer section of the printing process, and the ones with $1 through $4 would have been the inner notes. And once they reached the 65,000 for the $5 through $8 denominations, they would remove those blocks and then continue printing with the inner blocks to get the 130,000 for the $1 through $4. Okay, enough with mind-numbing stuff. But that's the new information that I wanted to share in this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead Michael Hillegas and George Clymer were the two joint Continental treasurers. They would be in charge of disseminating the Continental currency to pay for military and governmental expenses. All the Continental currency is denominated in Spanish mill dollars. All the currency is signed by two signers, except the fractionals are only signed by one signer. And there were over 200 different people signing the currency over the course of the 11 emissions. But neither one of these people signed it, they just spent the money. But there is a signer, and this is Samuel Hillegas, who is the son of the treasurer. And this is one of the few notes that has, instead of Franklin's nature print on the back, it has two different vignettes. And we just had a session last night on interesting vignettes on colonial paper money. But all these have Latin legends. Many of them are attributed to Ben Franklin. And in Ben Franklin's library, there was a book of legends and motifs and seals that Ben Franklin had, and he did use a lot of what was in there as suggestions to put on Continental currency. But this is a $30 note from 1776. And it's just a very nice example. All the people that signed these notes, the 200 plus, they were from the general Philadelphia area, and they didn't just give a quill pen to some drunk in the tavern and have him sign. These were people that were prominent businessmen, prominent in their social class, military officers, and a lot of these names you see in the notes, we don't know who they are. What a great thing to do in retirement, to get out of doing household chores, is researching these people and bringing their names back to life so that they're not forgotten. Many of them are military from the Philadelphia Associators. I'll get into those later. This is what's left of the Ivy Mills in Pennsylvania, right out south of Philadelphia. Ivy Mills provided all the paper for the Continental Congress issues, and I believe a lot for the Pennsylvania issues too. It's puzzled me why the Rittenhouse family, who established the first paper mill in Pennsylvania, didn't get any of the contract. There must have been politics going on or something there. I haven't figured it out, but it is what it was. What it was. These are the four fractional bills: 1/6 of a dollar, 1/3 of a dollar, half a dollar, and 2/3 of a dollar. And these designs are credited directly to Ben Franklin. And you wonder why the denominations, you could see maybe a half a dollar, but why the other unusual denominations? And the reason being is that these equated to actual coins. On the left here is a Spanish mill dollar, which is what the Continental currency was based on. And to the right here is a British shilling. Now, if 1/6 of a dollar was worth a shilling, 1/3 of a dollar is worth 2 shillings, a half dollar is worth 3 shillings, and 2/3 of a dollar is worth 4 shillings. So that would be pretty convenient for people. As a cheat sheet, in this square, there's a single dot for 1 shilling, 2 dots for 2 shillings, 3 dots for 3 shillings, and 4 dots for 4 shillings. To make it easy, some people said that maybe it was for people that had difficulty reading, but for whatever reason, I believe that that's why the dots are there. And here's a picture of the reverse, the chain link. This design of this note is what inspired the designs on the Fujio cent of 1787, which is a beautiful coin. And then there's a Continental currency medal that was struck in England and sold, I believe, for 6 pence a piece. That was also based on these designs too. Okay, now getting into a little bit of history. April 19th, 1775 was the battles of Lexington and Concord, the Second Continental Congress, and there were only two Continental Congresses, the first and the second. The second lasted from the beginning of the war on, and so on May 10th, 1775, according to what's on the note there, even though it was a couple weeks later, the Continental Congress decided we need money. We can't go forward without money. And they authorized $3 million of Continental currency to be printed. Then moving ahead, the American Navy was established October 13th, 1775. The Marines declare their birthday is November 10th, 1775. There are a lot of celebrations as we speak going. Actually, I was asked to speak at the Masonic Lodge today in Philadelphia, and I told them, I'm already committed. But a lot of celebrations for the 250th anniversary. And so Samuel Nicholas was in charge of recruiting Marines by the Continental Congress. Then moving on, Thomas Paine published Common Sense in January of 1776, which was a big influence on the American public to go forward with the revolution and get our independence. And this note was authorized February 17th, 1776. Total authorization of $4 million. They went from $3 million up to $4 million. And Congress just kept issuing money as the war went on. In March 1776, the British evacuate Boston. George Washington goes up to Boston to save the day, and a lot of good history up there, but from there it starts to go downhill a little bit as the British occupy New York for the rest of the war. On July 2nd, 1776, you have the Battle of Fort Sullivan, which today is Fort Moultrie in South Carolina. The fort of Fort Sullivan was not fully constructed yet. It was made out of the palmetto trees, right? That's why they call the South Carolina note the palmetto note. But it was made out of these trees, and the cannonballs from the British ships would just bounce off the trees because of the rubbery effect of their wood structure. But you had that July 2nd, 1776, New Jersey writes its state constitution, and of course July 4th, we have the Declaration of Independence, which I enjoy reading every year. We were not too kind in that document to the king at the time. Going off of our continental currency, this is a note from South Carolina called the Palmetto Note, and you can see in the background here in this vignette is the actual Battle of Fort Sullivan. It is the only depiction of a Revolutionary War battle on state currency. Just to enlarge it a little. On the left here you have Fort Sullivan. You have the South Carolina flag with the moon in the center, and you can see the fort and the smoke from the guns shooting at the British Navy. And you can see the ships on the right with their guns blazing at the fort. So the British were sent packing so quick that one of their ships that was grounded there, they burnt it so that we wouldn't get the ship. And that ship was the Action. And there's also a South Carolina note with the Action in its vignette in flames, which is a sister note to this one in my collection. Okay, the Revolutionary Army retreats across New York and across New Jersey, and November 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress decides it needs more money. Now they want $5 million printed in Continental currency. And what happens during November and December of 1776? We knew in New Jersey, I'm a New Jersey resident, we knew in New Jersey that the British were coming. But when you have people on foot dragging cannons with horses, word of their arrival travels faster than the actual army does. And as they're approaching Trenton, Washington brings his troops on the other side of the Delaware River, confiscates all the boats and barges so that the British can't have access to come after them. And it was a scary time. The Battle of Trenton, I think, is probably one of the most important battles in the Revolutionary War. And we'll actually get into that battle a little bit later on in the talk. But the Continental Congress in Philadelphia was scared. So they said, well, time for us to get out of here. So they moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and set up shop there to conduct business. And they issued another authorization for another $5 million in Continental currency. Now, although this was legislated February 26, 1777, it was probably printed in Philadelphia because they relocated back to Philadelphia a few days later. So there was no time to set up and print it. So this is a very collectible note because it's one of only two that were authorized outside of Philadelphia. And this is the last of the Continental currency, where across the top here it said United Colonies. At this point in time, we didn't want to be referred to as colonies anymore. We didn't want to use pounds, shillings, and pence as our denominations, which is why all of this is denominated in Spanish milled dollars. And there's a nice nature print on the back of a leaf. One of these printing blocks with a nature print of a leaf still exists, and along with two border devices. And they're not owned by, but they're at the Library Company of Philadelphia. And I went there to visit, and quite fascinated. And it's also fascinating, not only the three printing blocks, there's also a little wooden wedge there. So there's a lot of tinkering going on with these printing presses to get everything level so that it would print correctly. And it's so cool that somebody saved a little wedge to make one of these printing blocks level. Okay, we're back in Philadelphia now, and Congress decides, well, we need more money and we can't be doing it $5 million at a time. So they said, well, let's print $16.5 million more dollars. And the Revolutionary Army is about ready to end their winter encampment in Morristown on May 28th. And this is the first issue with United States up in the upper border. Printed by Hall and Sellers. All these are printed by Hall and Sellers in Philadelphia. Hall was a former partner with Ben Franklin and bought Franklin out at this point in time and took on Sellers as his new partner. They printed all the Continental currency. Well, what happens? Finally, the British occupy Philadelphia, and they stayed there September of 1777 to June 1778, had a lot of holiday parties. I think that they quartered their horses in one of the churches there. I don't believe they were super respectful of the city, and the Philadelphians were happy to see them go when they finally left. But the Continental Congress decided it was time to get out of Dodge. So they traveled west, and they set up shop in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and they stayed there for a couple days. And then they thought, well, we'd be a lot safer if we were on the other side of the Susquehanna River. So they relocated to Yorktown, Pennsylvania, today's York, Pennsylvania, and set up shop there. While there, they authorized another $25 million of Continental currency, and the authorization date and Yorktown is in the legend, and you can see it there. These bills were counterfeited almost before they were issued, and it's a rare note because a lot of this issue was just destroyed because of the counterfeit. The British were very effective with their counterfeiting operations in New York, very effective. But these are, I guess the Yorktown issues are probably the most difficult financially to find, and I'm very happy to have this one. It's $25 million. Wow. Even in today's money, that's a lot of money. Back then, that was like $1 billion. Well, don't quote me on that. I'm just guesstimating. Okay, finally, the British leave Philadelphia, and the Continental Congress comes back, authorizes another $75 million in colonial paper, and they departed in June of 1778. So a few months later, September, they authorized, and Congress was here for the duration of the war. This is identical to the last note, except it has no signature, no serial number. Signatures and serial numbers were hand applied. This is a blue counterfeit detector. And these were printed on the actual printing presses that made the currency, but printed on blue paper. There's an early issue of Continental currency detectors that I think was on pink. I don't have an example of that. But this is a blue counterfeit detector, and you can see rocking back and forth between the two issues. It's identical. So you could tell a counterfeit. Some of the counterfeits were really good, and you've got to look for little tiny differences to determine a counterfeit from the real. But us today's collectors, we have Eric Newman's book on early paper money of America, which gives us lists of what was counterfeited and what to look for to determine whether you have a counterfeit or a genuine note. The counterfeits are every bit as collectible, sometimes more than the real issue. Then we have January 14th, 1779, the last issue of Continental currency. $95 million was approved. I don't know, back then, I can't believe a government is just going to continue printing money without anything to back it. We'd never do that nowadays. But you know, the Battle of Cowpens, you know, the end of the Revolutionary War was coming up. But 1779, we could not redeem these bills. The states did not come forward to redeem them. So what happens is the Continental Congress tries to get around this. Well, let's try to legislate something to get out of this. So they started Continental state currency, and they offered the individual states congressionally backed currency. You can see on the back here an enlargement where the Continental Congress guarantees the payment of these notes. Now, these notes could be used, I think that the ratio was 40-1 with the Continental Congress and the redemption of the actual Continental currency. It was a fiasco. It was not successful. But the states that decided to go ahead along with the Continental currency was New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Virginia, Massachusetts, and Maryland. And these are very collectible. They were redeemed. The Continental Congress was so big on making sure that everything was in Spanish mill dollars. Why did they issue interests in pounds, shillings, and pence? I think that the general public was accustomed to that type of money in circulation and doing their calculations. I'm certainly glad we're on the decimal system and we don't have to deal with those pounds, shillings, and pence. But if it wasn't for those rabble-rousers in Lexington and Concord, we might still be dealing with pounds, shillings, and pence. Somebody had to start the ball rolling. Okay. Joseph Borden, signing on behalf of the Continental Congress, it was his father that founded Bordentown, New Jersey. And Joseph actually had his house burnt to the ground Bordentown's very historic. There's on the main street there, a lot of famous people, Hopkinson, Payne, others lived on that main street there in Bordentown. This bill is signed by Frederick Cole and Anthony Morris Jr. I went into the Morris family research kind of inspired by a friend of mine, Mike Brooks. He got into Anthony Morris, and I decided to go into the whole family. The Morris family had 5 members that signed Continental currency in the earlier issues. And there was Anthony Morris Jr., Thomas Morris, Samuel Morris, Luke Morris, and Samuel C. Morris, the C standing for Cadwallader. Now, of these, Thomas Morris was the only one that stayed true to his Quaker beliefs and did not get involved in the military. Samuel Morris, Anthony, Thomas, and Samuel were all brothers. Luke Morris was an uncle. He was attached to a cavalry unit that was part of George Washington's defense. He was close to wherever George Washington was. And Samuel C. Morris was a cousin. So we have 4 of these guys, and they joined the Philadelphia Associators. Now this was a militia group out of Philadelphia, formed by Ben Franklin and some of his associates in 1747, basically for the defense of the city against Native Americans, or if anybody attacked. There was always a war going on with France, it seemed like. But they were all part of the Philadelphia militia. They all were members. The Philadelphia militia was brigaded with Samuel Nicholas's Marines, and they were supposed to be there at the Battle of Trenton. Washington was supposed to come in from the north, and the Associators and the Marines from the south in a pincer movement. The Philadelphia people did not make it across the Delaware River, so George Washington captured Trenton, all with his army, all on their own. But the militia and the Marines did make it across in time for the Second Battle of Trenton and the Battle of Princeton. Anthony Morris Jr. died on January 3rd, 1777, in the Battle of Princeton. And it's kind of ironic that he died out of spite. The thing is, he was holding to his Quaker positions. He was very close to his sister. His sister, with his approval, got married to a Philadelphia businessman. The Philadelphia businessman wanted to move his location down to the islands and take his wife with him. Anthony was close to his sister, didn't want her to go. He wanted her to stay. He offered to pay for her house and everything to keep her there. She decided out of love to go with her husband. He threatened her that if you leave, I'm going to join the military. She left, he joined the military, and he died. I wonder what kind of guilty feelings his sister had after this happened. War is a terrible thing, back then and today. But the cool thing about this is that there exists today the only inventory of a dead Revolutionary soldier. And it has all kinds of cool stuff on it. This inventory was made after he died by the attending physician on the Princeton battlefield, who was maintaining a little field hospital in the Thomas Clark House. This is also where General Mercer died. Mercer died a few days after he was brought there. Morris lasted a couple hours before he died. And I'm going to read it. This inventory of the possessions on his body is signed by the attendant physician. The list includes Morris's uniform, shoes, wig, cartridge box, belt, fur cap, mittens, tobacco box, knives and forks, buckles, keys, buttons, flints, watch, and money. So it's the money that we're about. So at the bottom is an enlargement of what's up here, and it says $77 and 2/3 and 1/7. The Society of Philadelphia has this, and on their website they itemize as $77, but they don't equate the rest. That 2/3 of a dollar, I would like to believe, is the very note I showed you in the beginning in my collection. That's my story, and I'm going to stick to that one. But without a doubt, the 2/3 of a dollar was either a 2/3 fractional or 2/1/6 fractional, and he did sign some of those. These signers were actually paid with Continental currency, so the Continental Congress didn't have to lay out hard currency to pay these people. But after that, there's 1/7, which had me a little confused. It shouldn't. I actually reached out to Eric Goldstein about this, and he said, well, of course, that's 1 shilling 7 pence. So he had British currency on him, or he had Philadelphia currency that was denominated in pounds, shillings, and pence. So he could have had a shilling. 7 pence would be 14.5 pennies in his pocket, flints and whatever. And that's an image I got out of a biographical family book of Anthony Morris Jr. But moving on, here's a note signed by Samuel Morris as an example, and Thomas Barton. A lot of these people are military. All of them came from the Philadelphia area, and they were well known. Now the thing is, it came up a question yesterday. If you have these notes in South Carolina or up in Massachusetts, nobody knows these signers. All the state notes, people were aware of the people within their state that were prominent. Up in Boston, they wouldn't know anything about Samuel Morris or Thomas Barton. But that's one of those questions that you can debate and think about, but we probably don't know the answer. Here we have a note signed by Samuel Nicholas and William Gray. Samuel Nicholas is a founding father of the Marines, and they're having their anniversary. I was able to place a couple of these Samuel Nicholas signed notes with some of the people involved with this anniversary. And the Philadelphia Associators, to this day, the 111th Pennsylvania National Guard traces their unit all the way back, and they're very proud. Actually, they have a little patch on their shoulder calling them the Associators. And this is the Command Sergeant Major Sean Phillips of the Pennsylvania National Guard. He is the #1 non-com. You don't get higher in rank than this, and he's in charge of all the National Guard in Pennsylvania, including the 111th. And I just had to put the slide in there, just to show that good looks is in our family. But moving, I expected more of a laugh, and hopefully people watching the video will get a little laugh out of that. But recommended books, Paper Money, the Freeburg books. I think that the Freeburg authors have sold the publication, but it's still being published. And this gives you a listing. There's about 30 or 35 pages of that book dedicated to Continental currency and state currency. It gives you a numbering system that you could collect by, and it's the pricing guide of types. The early paper money of America, the center book, is the Bible for people collecting colonial and continental currency. The whole book, 250 pages, 300 pages, is dedicated to nothing but colonial and continental currency, and I highly recommend it. The 5th edition is available online for free and on the Newman Numismatic Portal. They also have a living version of this book where people are contributing images, so you can go to that and get images of many bills that could not physically be plated in a book. There's only so much room. And then the Farley Grubb, the final book, The Continental Dollar, is written by Farley Grubb. He is an economist as a professor in the University of Delaware, and that's also the university that our numismatic scholar Jesse Kraft at the ANS, he got his doctorate, I believe, from that university. But this book is well worthwhile. There are so many facts and details in there Some things I think you need to be an economist to understand, but in general, it gives you a lot of good information about this guy went and read all the Continental papers, Congress papers, from beginning to end, pulling out information. And just a wonderful book to have. So those are the three books. If you had to have one, get The Early Paper Money of America. The 5th edition online is also great and covers most anything that you'd want to know. And the slide you've all been waiting for. Here we go. How did I do time? Well, I stayed pretty much within my limits. Okay, so questions, and hopefully I'll have some answers. Will?
I understand the concept of fitting the right number of notes and pages, to make it come out to be the authorized event. But why did they pick those why did Congress pick those particular denominations?
Okay, they kept them in a grouping. It would have been more friendly for the public to have a lot more smaller denominations, and then to balance that out to get the same millions of dollars issued, they'd have to have a lot of upper, higher denominations. And being that these were promissory notes promised to redeem in the future, people understood that, an $8 bill, it was like a $100 bill now. An $80 bill was, I don't know, like a $10,000 bill. So what they did is they concentrated the bills around a certain block of denominations, except in the final issue and the early issues where they had the $1, and having them in that, it was easier for them to calculate, I believe, to get the notes in a range where every note was printed in the same number.
Gouverneur Morris and Thomas Jefferson did all that logic around this is how the numbers fit together to exchange currency without making change.
Yeah.
And it seems like they just said, okay, we're going to do 23 denominations.
Yeah, but they only did it like 8 denominations at a time, and as they needed more money, they increased these denominations.
Yeah, there's no $10 bill.
No, there isn't. Well, no decimal system yet. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a $10 bill. Okay. Other questions?
I have a question. These to me seem like they're a bit operated a bit like bonds, almost.
Yeah, they're.
And were they also? And what was backing it? I thought I saw some mention of gold and silver. Was that the backing?
Okay, there was no backing at the time. The backing was a promise that the states would redeem these at a future date. The date starting in 1779. Yes, exactly, right. So, but because people had them in their hands, they could use them in Congress, and whoever had it at the end was hoping to get their money for it.
One more question.
Yes. Ask away.
Early 1780s, I've seen some notes from the early 1780s that were signed by Michael Hayes that have been classified as continental currency. Do you know anything about that?
By Michael Hill, guess?
I think it's Hayes, actually. It was his family.
Yeah. Well, I think I talked about that earlier. That he did. That was Samuel's son signed it.
Okay.
I'm going to go. The 1780s.
1780s notes that are extremely rare.
And Pennsylvania notes?
No,
Or
they were issued at a federal level, and I don't know if they were for circulation or for just exchanges between.
okay, I'm not familiar with those.
But I've seen them classified as continental currency.
Yeah, I am not familiar with those. Eric, have you heard about those?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what their function was. There's some sort of other type of fiscal instrument, for lack of a better term.
Like the $100,000 note.
Yeah, I just can't remember how they function. They're
Probably
rare as hen's teeth.
Paying off the French or something like that.
They're not for the common Joe in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But I have seen them classified as continental currency.
Okay. Other questions?
So
Yes.
what about the redemption question?
ultimately, I believe at the final end of redemption, they were redeemed at $1 per $100 face value. So 1% redemption in bills at the time. So if the Army came in and commandeered 2 of your horses off a farm for $50 a piece, and you got $100 in Continental currency, at the final redemption, you would have been compensated $1 for those horses. People have called that the cost of our revolution. It was a tax of type done on the people and through commerce. And it was just one of those, I feel bad for those people, but it had to be done in order to keep the Army moving and the Congress.
But other debts were handled. I mean, I remember Alexander Hamilton argued very strongly, we have to pay the foreign, we have to pay our debts. So these are foreign debts, these are like.
Well, the foreign debts after the war, yeah, well, we had foreign debts, and I think for the most part, they were paid off. Yeah, I believe that our Continental Army, didn't they try to come after the Continental Congress to get pay? And the Congress ended up moving around, and I think it finally ended up in New York. And they left Philadelphia, went to Trenton, then kept moving and ended up in New York. But yeah, that's true. Other questions?
I was just going to comment because I just finished reading the Farley Grove book. You need to read that book. It'll at the end in 1790 when they redeemed all this stuff, they said foreign debts will be paid at face value. So all the foreign debts were fine. Any other private debts or whatever, or public debts, other than Continental currency, was I think done at like 40%, and the Continental currency was done at 1%. And they just said that's the way we can do it, and that's the way we're going to do it.
And there was speculation going on. You know, after the war, some speculators were buying up some Continental currency at a fraction of their value, hoping that someday they'd be redeemed at full value. And I don't think any of those speculators made out okay.
How was this distributed? And how, if you were the average person on the street, how would you acquire this? Was it a work thing? Was it a banking system?
Okay, the Continental currency went to the Continental treasurers, and they would disperse it for both government and military purposes, and through the government and the military, it dispersed into the different states. So it probably was more concentrated, in the north than it was in the south, being that the south was mostly farming and plantations and not a lot of big business, as was Charleston, Philadelphia. New York was occupied the whole time, so they were out of the picture. Boston, kind of thing.
Okay, right. If I remember in the Continental papers of the Continental Congress, there are entries for wagon loads of currency going out to Army cantonment areas to pay the troops. So vast quantities went directly to the Continental soldiers.
But just as an aside, those denominations, the weird ones, 30, 35, 40, 45, actually correspond to different pay grades in the military. I don't know if that connection was there when they were considering it, but they actually match up pretty closely to
According to the Farley Grove book, again, I'm sorry, because it's fresh in my mind because I just finished it the other day. Like something like 77% of the initial issues went to pay troops. So that's how it got into the circulation. They just paid troops. Then after that, most of it, like half of it was used for paying troops, and the other half was used to buy goods for the Army. So again, that's how they got it. So the government just printed this and said, I'm giving you this, and I'm taking, I'm paying off my thing. But yeah, so a lot of that, I think the higher denominations, after a while, they had to start paying troops more because it was, I don't want to use inflation or deflation because there's an argument that says they did not deflate, they did not depreciate. They were zero coupon bonds, they were just at present value. But anyway, it gets into a whole bunch of other stuff. they bring in higher denominations, they pay troops more because they were worth less.
Yeah.
And, so that's where you get the higher denomination. And I'll just make one other comment. I don't know, like, $1, $2 makes sense. I don't know why 3, 4, 5, 6, but like $8 was equivalent to a coin, a Portuguese coin called a half gem. So and I think some of the other ones were, valued at that. So I think that was some of the rationale behind some of the
Yeah.
denominations.
Yeah, as Eric was referring to wagon loads of currency, John Kralovich published a series of articles, I think it was in the Numismatist, and he had one about the fractional continental currency, where he did talk about a wagon load of sheets of continental currency being sent to Morristown, New Jersey, when the troops were encamped there. And the quartermaster, I guess, who was in charge of storing this, wrote back to the Continental Congress saying, please in the future, send us higher denominations. There is so much of this, and it's got to be kept guarded and stored, and it's a terrible burden in the future. Please send higher denominations. And
how much did they actually print? I know they authorized like 242 million, but how much actually got printed?
I believe probably the full amount. Yeah, the people at Ivy Mills were busy making paper. They were also, I believe, at the end there, they started watermarking the paper at the end, and the Continental Congress told Ivy Mills that should the British approach again, they were supposed to take those frames where they made the paper, the rag paper that had the watermark wire in it, and throw them into the lake on the other side of a dam so that the British don't get a hold of that. Because they were having a little hard time counterfeiting the notes that had the watermarks. Roger Moore's doing research on that, and I hope he's done some in that to be able to determine the counterfeit watermarks versus the real watermarks. That would be fun to find out. Other questions? Well, thank you for coming, letting me share some of my hobby fun, and I look forward to any comments. Let me put up that last screen again for the people online, that if you want to, I think my contact information is on there. Whoop, I went out, so let me just go down to the end. Yes, my email is on there. I enjoy communications anytime. Slideshow from current slide. There we go. Okay. So I enjoy communications anytime. Just email away, and I don't have all the answers. There's some things there are no answers for yet, but that's what makes it fun, trying to find the answers. But I know people who know things that I don't know. How do I know that they know it if I don't know? Well, so I'm gonna end this talk there. Thank you for listening.